For those who are here, new to the American Writers Museum, it includes not just historical figures we all studied in school, but all the writers whose words shaped our understandings of the world around us on a daily basis, including the great authors of fantasy and science fiction. Tonight we welcome an author Kirkus reviews called Almost Insufferably Good. One of the most read and acclaimed writers of sci-fi in the past decade. John Scalzi's New York Times bestsellers include The Lost Colony, Fuzzy Nation, and Red Shirts, one of my favorite. The latter winning the 2013 Hugo Award for Best Novel. He has written nonfiction books and columns on diverse topics such as finance, video games, films, astronomy, writing, and politics, and served as a creative consultant on the TV series Stargate Universe. He also writes every day on his long-running blog, The Whatever, and on Twitter about travel, photography, pets, pie, and the 1,000,001 things that can be called a burrito. He's a strong advocate for diverse voices in his chosen field, and we're pretty sure he's the only writer in this museum who's ever taped bacon to a cat. So, please help me in helping me welcome John Scalzi.
First, I'd like to issue a correction. Theodore Dreiser was known to tape bacon to his cat. I'm just the first to have done it on the internet. I want to make sure that's very clear. Second of all, I'm about to take a picture of you all so that we can put it up on Twitter later. So on the count of three, wave. 1, 2, 3. There we go. You all blinked. We knew that would happen. Hold on 1 second. Wait, no, don't. Stop. What are you doing? Don't back. Just no. Computers are dangerous, just so you know. So are phones. This is my new phone because my old phone bricked itself on the first day of the tour. And I spent 5 minutes just staring at my old dead phone, trying to will it back into life. And the person who was traveling with me, she says, "You looked like you broke out in a sweat. It was terrible." And 90% of me was like, no, this is horrible. This is the worst possible time for this to brick itself. It is the first day of the tour. I need all of my information that is on the phone. And the other 10% said, the Pixel 3 is coming out tomorrow. My precious. Hi. It was really funny because, you know, the guy's doing the introduction, and I'm like, they know. They've like I know like half of you, right? So it's like, there's like, oh, yeah, we know Scalzi. He's not all that. We're here for pity, and which I appreciate. I will take it. Thank you so much. So tonight I'm going to do a couple of things. This tour I've been going about, this is actually my 10th book tour ever, which is a lot if you think about it. And I've been doing the thing where I've been, usually when I do a tour, I do a reading from an upcoming work, and then I read something funny, and then I will read something from whatever. And that's fine because it's not like you guys follow me like you follow The Dead or Fish or anything like that. So the same lineup every day is not a problem for you. But for me, I've been wanting to keep things fresh. And so what I've been actually doing this tour is I have this 10-sided die, and I roll it, and I have a list of 10 things that I will be doing. Which include 1, read from an upcoming work, 2, read from someone else's new work, 3, read juvenilia, 4, read from whatever, 5, speak authoritatively and persuasively for several moments on a topic chosen by the audience, even if I do not know anything about that topic, which means basically improv mansplaining. Fingers crossed, right? I mean, if we don't get to it in the actual event, then you can always ask a question. 6, read something that will probably make me cry, because I'm a crier. 7, lead an audience sing-along of an 80s pop song if someone has brought a ukulele or guitar to the event. Has anyone brought a ukulele or guitar to the event? Oh, come on, man. I've been telling you guys about this for weeks, so we'll not be doing number 7. In which case, I will tell you the song that I was going to make you all sing with me, which was a-ha's Take On Me. Because there is nothing like a whole room of people not hitting that note. Because not only do you not hit that note, because no one can hit that note, right? Even auto-tune can't hit that note. But everybody misses it in their own idiomatic way. So you have a room of like 50, 60, 70, 100 people all missing it uniquely. And it's a miracle it doesn't shatter bones. Number 8, give a mini clinic on how to write a novel in just number of weeks. 9, read something funny. And 10, or 0 on this die, reveal the meaning of life. Now, I know, right? You didn't know that that was going to happen, and yet it's a real possibility. And the first 3 nights that I did the tour, that came up, and I was like, that's a sign from someone. Now, because we are at the American Writers Museum, I feel actually like I should talk about something relating to the process of writing and how it all works. So in fact, I am going to go ahead and do number 8, which is give a mini clinic on how to write a novel in just a number of weeks. And so that will be fine. But for the other 2, let's go ahead and roll this dice. Actually, I need somebody here. You come up and roll it for me so that people don't know I'm cheating. Number 5, which is speak authoritatively and persuasively for several moments on a topic. 1, which is read from an upcoming work. And because 5 actually ends real short, because I have a process for that, which is basically I will start talking, you start raising your hand when you're like, that's bullshit. And when the majority of you have raised your hand, then we move on to the other thing. Number 9, I will read something funny as well as soon as that's done. But to begin, and can I actually borrow your book for a moment there, sir, because you're in the front row. All right, I'm going to talk about how to write a novel in just a mumble number of weeks. Now first, I want you to guess, using your hands, how many weeks it took me to write this book. On the count of 3, raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, go. 9 weeks, no. 7 weeks, no. And when you get your numbers, then load your time. You're flashing blinky. I have no idea what that means, sir. I'm saying more than 10. No. 4, no. 6, no. 8, no. 3, no. 10, I already said no. Put your hands down. 20, you put up your feet. Okay, 1, you have shoes on, so that's clearly 12. 2, no. 5 weeks, no. And somebody here had a number, 6 weeks, no. You all got it wrong. There we go. Hold up your hand, sir. Not you, him. 2 weeks. Yeah, I know, right? I wrote this book in 2 weeks. I'm sorry, could you say that again? I'm not sure the audience heard that one. But yes, the yelp of indignation trademark is something that happens every time I mention that. And now I'm going to tell you how to write a book of 80,000 words in 2 weeks. 1, this is the first step. Think that your book is actually coming out in April of 2019, when in fact it comes out in October of 2018. 2, do not learn that the book is coming out in October 2018 until the pre-order page goes up on Amazon. I just kind of look at that and go, oh. I guess I should maybe start writing that. So that's 6 months gone from your schedule right there. Now, to be fair to Tor, they may have told me that that they had moved it up on the schedule, but if they had told me that, they told me that while I was writing Lock-In, which was the book that was coming out in April. Speaking of which, the book in April, you will be doing edits for, and proofing, and doing a lot of prep for your tour, which you will do also in April, which will be a 9 or 10-day tour. Plus, you are doing other events through April and May, so that keeps you busy. Then there's the fact that, I don't know if you know this, because I don't know if any of you follow the news, but apparently the world is on fire. And if you're me, the very first gig that you ever had, or one of the very first gigs you ever had professionally, was writing opinion columns. And so it is literally in your writer DNA to sit there and think about what's going on in the world and then write. In fact, that's why I started writing the Whatever, my blog, which celebrated its 20th anniversary last month. It was to keep sharp in the telling people my opinions about things. So that distracts you because the world's on fire. And apparently you absolutely cannot turn away from that. And not only that, you feel compelled to write about it. So that gets you through to about June. And the book is due on June 18th at 9 a.m. And it's June 4th. And you've written maybe the prologue of the book. So there's about 80,000 words to go. So you turn to your wife and you say, this is how it's going to work. I'm going to live in my office. Every couple of hours, you're going to shove food under the door. Once a day, come and retrieve the jug. To which she responds, 1, you will pee like a normal human. Yes, you will. Yes, indeed, you will. And then everything else you will do. So, and so literally from basically July or June 4th through June 18th, just wrote every day about 8,000 words a day and just cranked it out. Now, here's the thing, though. When I say, and this is where we begin the actual really interesting part of this, which is when I say that I wrote this in 2 weeks, what I actually mean to say is that I typed it in 2 weeks. Because once I finished The Collapsing Empire, which was the book that was the prequel to this one, I started writing this book. Because I ended it on a cliffhanger, and one, I knew if I didn't resolve cliffhanger things, you would all burn me. Not just like an effigy, like you would have brought charcoal briquettes to the evening, and it would have been very toasty for me. But I started thinking about where are these characters going? What is going to happen to them? How is this going to happen? How does this make sense? And so every day when I wasn't writing head on, I was thinking about the consuming fire. And one of the things that they like to tell you about writers is that when a writer is looking out a window, they are writing. It's not always true. Sometimes we're just looking at a squirrel, okay? But in fact, what happens is so much of what is writing is sitting there just thinking about things. And every writer, if you ask them, will tell you the time where they spend writing that you wouldn't think that they spend their time writing. Like I do the majority of my writing in the shower, right? The shower is a place where you're just standing there, water's hitting you. Sooner or later, you have to get clean. That's part of the deal. But most of the rest of the time, you're just sitting there, and you're not doing anything else but standing there. And because I'm not doing anything else other than standing there, my brain wanders, and it problem solves. And it thinks about the things that I have just painted myself into a corner to when I'm writing, and how to solve it, how to fix it, some of the things that I'm thinking about for this book and the book beyond it and the book beyond it. So basically, I take 40-minute showers, which is really good that I don't live in California, because otherwise I'd go to shower prison, because they're very, very tight about water stuff. I live in Ohio. We have tons of water. So I just sit there and I think. And so doing that is my way of writing. Some people write while they go on long drives. Some people write while they do the dishes. Some people clean their house obsessively, even when it doesn't need to be cleaned, because that keeps their body active while their brain is going off and doing the other thing. So much of what is writing is not sitting there typing. So much of it is thinking. Now, you have to have some bit of ordered thinking to it. You can't just let it wander. You have to actually pay attention to what your brain is saying, file it away later, so that when you come to a point where all of a sudden, holy crap, you have to write 8,000 words a day, every day, for 14 days, that you can actually come back to what you have done before, the work that you have done before. And the other way that I was able to do or write this book in 2 weeks is that I have written 13 other books, or 13 other novels. And so what that meant was the muscle memory of writing novels was sufficiently advanced that things like pacing, things like ending chapters on cliffhangers, things like making sure the characters are responding believably to each other, those were all muscle memory. It's just like a guitarist who's doing the scales all the time, who plays certain songs all the time, so that when they have cause to improvise, every tool that they need has already been there, has already been developed. This was the same for me. I didn't have to worry about whether or not I could write a novel. I had done it plenty of times. I'd even written novels fairly quickly. Red Shirts was written in 5 weeks. Fuzzy Nation was written in 6 weeks. So the speed was a little weird, but it was something that I had done before. But because I had done that before, it allowed me to do that. If this had been a first novel and I had tried to write it in 2 weeks, it mostly would have been gerunds and screaming. So fortunately, that was not a problem here. But the muscle memory of writing, and having not only just written novels, but having written basically every day of my life for the last 30 years, made it possible to do this. The final thing that made it possible to write this in 2 weeks, and which absolutely should not be overlooked, is the fact that the people at Tor, who are my publishers, had my back. They knew that this was coming in hot. They knew that I had basically asked them, what is the absolute last minute that I can get this thing in? And they were like, June 18th, 7 or 9 o'clock in the morning. Basically, when Patrick Nielsen Hayden puts his ass in his chair at the Tor offices, it needs to be there for him. And I was like, okay, actually, he originally said June 15th. And I was like, well, I could get it to you on June 15th, but you would actually hear the screaming in the pages. And it would be at 5 o'clock, and it's the weekend anyway, so give me the weekend. And he's like, oh, fine. So June 18th. But they knew it was coming in hot, and they had prepared. So the copy editor, Deanna Hoke, knew that she was going to have to do a tight schedule. The page proofers knew that they were going to have to do a tight schedule. Everybody was prepped and ready to go so that when it came in, we could immediately turn it over. And that says two things for me. One, it's great to work with people who know what they're doing and can just really, really turn that key and get it done. The other thing is that meant that they actually had faith that when this showed up in Patrick Nielsen Hayden's queue, that it would be ready to go. That I had done my part of the bargain and made it something that they could immediately put into copy editing, make it something that they could immediately put into page proofing right after that. So they were telling me essentially that they trusted me to stick the dismount. And it may sound like a small thing, but no, the fact that you have an entire crew of people who are like, we got you, and we believe that you are actually going to do this for us, makes a real difference. It gave me the faith that I could actually pull it off. I turned it in at 7:30 on June 18th. I went and slept for 3 hours, and then I realized I was too tired to sleep. So I went downstairs and I started watching TV. I put on Teen Titans Go, right? Because I figured that was about the speed my brain could handle at that particular moment. 10 minutes later, I turned it off because it was just too many colors, right? Chrissy tells me, because I was kind of in a fugue state, Chrissy tells me that she could tell it literally took a week before I was back at full brain power, right? Because my brain had just turned into pudding. And so I turned it in, and then of course immediately as soon as I turned it in, I'm like, why haven't you told me what you think yet? You know, it's been 15 whole minutes since I've turned it in. You probably haven't even showed up, but I need to know now. Sure, I waited until the absolute last minute to turn it in, but you need to reassure me now because I'm just freaking the hell out over here. A couple days later, Patrick got back to me, and he said, this is great. It may be even better than the first book. And my two reactions to that were like, one, great, because the muscle memory and everything else did actually work, and I was managed to pull it off. The other reaction I had was, oh no, this isn't good. I have not been punished for bad behavior. Because I want to be very, very, very clear. Do not do this. This is a terrible, terrible idea. I would not be telling you that I did this if I hadn't already seen the trade reviews and that they were all good, right? I mean, I want to be very blunt. The fact that, you know, the trade reviews were like, hey, it's Scalzi doing Scalzi, so if you like Scalzi and you're Scalzi, this is the Scalzi. That's pretty much basically what the reviews were. They were like, yep, that's what he does. That's what you come to Scalzi for. You know, it's everything that he is and absolutely none that he's not. And I'm like, great, I'm a type. Congratulations, me. But the fact that they were like, nope, no, that nobody could tell that I had written it in 2 weeks, and just made me like be able to tell you. But that's the other really important thing is you can't tell how long these take us. You just don't know, right? This one was 2 weeks. The Head On, which was the previous book that I wrote, took me a year to write for much the same reason. The world was on fire, and I just wasn't able to figure out what I was doing. Which reminds me, the other secret was I finally acknowledged, much in the way that someone who joins a 12-step group does, that I was powerless over Twitter, and that my life had become unmanageable. And I actually, for those 2 weeks, I had a piece of software. It's called Freedom, which blocked Twitter, blocked Facebook, blocked Reddit, blocked all the news sites. So every time I did that thing of, I'll just check, see what's going on in the world, it was like, no. And I'm like, damn it, what do you mean, no? The world needs to hear from Scalzi. No. The world didn't need to hear from Scalzi. And so now when I'm writing, from 8 until 12 every day, I use that software to block out the internet because, quite honestly, I can't help myself. You know, I'm almost 50 years old. That behavior, you know, is never going to change. So I just have to accept the fact that I need, you know, the blocking software to go, no, you should actually be doing your work. So, but again, you can't tell reading reading Head On or reading The Consuming Fire how much time it took. All you can tell is whether or not the book was written. And I think that's important because at the end of the day, what really matters is that writers give you something that you can enjoy. If it takes us 2 weeks, it's really ill-advised, but fine. If it takes 2 years, that's fine too. Ultimately, the proof in the pudding is in the reading. And I will finish this part of the thing by telling you a story, which was that I told Mary Robinette Cole, who is one of my best friends, about how long it took me to write this thing. While we were traveling from San Jose to Albuquerque between WorldCon, and where I came in second to Nora Jemisin, and richly so. I'm super excited for her. And when we were co-guests of honor at Babanacon, which is in Albuquerque, and we had 2 stops along the way because she had a new book coming out, and we were basically doing a mini tour for that. And so I told her about this, and I was like, "Don't tell anyone." And she was like, "Oh no, of course I won't." And so we're at the Cocteau Cinema in Santa Fe, which is George Martin's cinema where he does author events. And we're doing a mutual sort of interview thing. And apparently she forgot that I told her not to ask, apparently. And she's like, "So John, tell everyone how long it took you to write the book." I'm like, Because the reviews hadn't come out yet. I didn't want it to, I was like, it took me 2 weeks. And she's like, and how many words was that? And I was like, well, it was like 80,000 words. And then over here, from the corner, I hear, I hate you. It was George. So there you go. That's that story. So that's how you write a book in 2 weeks. The next thing is apparently I'm reading from an upcoming work. So I'm going to do that right away. I got to pull up my tour readings. So, as many of you know, I have a ridiculously long contract with Tor Books. It's 13 books over 10 years, which is a lot and a long time. And that was really surprising to me. My agent and I think in 2015, were like, we want Tor to give us a long-term contract, maybe like 5 books or something like that. So I came up with 13 story ideas or novel ideas, a combination of stuff, like another Old Man's War book, another book in the Lock-In series, this series, which became the Interdependency series, plus some other new stuff. And we basically went in and we were like, so here are 13 things. And pick however many you want and let's get this done. And they're like, okay, we'll take all of them. And I was like, okay, you're aware that 3 of them are meant to be young adult books. And they're like, yeah, that's fine. And I'm like, and you're also aware that those 3 YA books, 2 of them are not meant to be science fiction or fantasy at all. And they're like, we don't care. We don't want you writing for anyone else. Which was simultaneously affirming and a little bit creepy. But the thing that I like to say is that they liked it so much that they put a ring on it. So this is the Tor ring. And there's a story about this, and at least 2 of you in the audience were here for this story, so you can back me up on this one. So I'm over again at Mary Robinette Cole's place. She's having a winter gathering of friends, and my wife and I had come to the event, and I had just gotten my ring, and I put it on. And I was not being, like, obnoxious about it. I was, like, not doing, like, could you pass the butter, please? Thank you. But I had it on. And so we're talking, and we're doing all this sort of stuff, and then all of a sudden, Lynn, I'm blanking on her last name, but I've only known her for 7 years. Lynn Thomas of Uncanny Magazine. I am so sorry, Lynn. There was one time I was introducing my wife to somebody, and I was like, Bob, this is my wife, Christine. And this is why I tell people, if I blank on my wife's name, and I've been married to her for 20 years, I'm going to blank on yours. It's not personal. It's just bad wiring, too much Coke Zero. But Lynn Thomas is like, grabs my hand, and she's like, you have a Tor ring! And then everybody just looks at the Tor ring, and I'm just like, yes, I do. And Wes Chu is like, I want a Tor ring. And fan of Wes over here? And I was like, well, fortunately, Patrick Nielsen Hayden told me the story that I could tell you when you say you want a Tor ring. He says if you get a 13-book, 10-year, $3.4 million contract with Tor, you get a ring too. So I was like, fine. Now, as it happens, just this last year, Victoria Schwab got a multi-book, multi-year, 7-figure contract with Tor as well, and she asked for and received a ring, Tor ring, and when she got it, she immediately felt a little weird about it, and because she knew that I had one, and she was worried that I would be like jealous, and I would be like, no, there can only be one, and then it would be all Highlander, where we'd be like, ah! So she sends me a picture of it and says, I have this, is that okay? And my immediate response to her was, oh my God, the next time we meet, we are going to click them together like the Wonder Trends. Bing! And so literally every time I see her, if she's got the ring on, there's a bing. So I'm going to see her. I'm going to see her in at the next Sunday in Texas for the Texas Book Festival, and we're going to click them together, and we're going to have a wonderful time. But anyway, like I said, one of the things that I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be writing YAs, which I'm really excited about because I love YA, and so many of my friends write YAs, and I think it's just a very exciting field, and it's something that I've always been interested in doing. And in fact, Zoe's Tale was originally kind of meant to be a YA, but then we put it through the adult sales channel, so it's not really officially one, but these will be. And I'm going to read to you from one of those. This is an upcoming book that is called School for Hostages. And the idea behind this is they're international crime syndicates, you've heard of them, and the international crime syndicates mostly have criminals in them. But occasionally they need civilians. You need mob lawyers, you need mob doctors, you need mob accountants, mob bakers, that sort of thing. Now, if you're a criminal, you know not to cross the criminal conspiracy because they will shove you into a 55-gallon drum and drop you into Lake Michigan, right? But if you're a civilian, you are susceptible to things like the FBI or Interpol or anything like that. So in order to enforce compliance and to make sure you don't rat on the international criminal conspiracy, here's what happens. You are a mob doctor. You're a newly hired mob doctor. Congratulations. And so your teenage child gets a acceptance into a special private boarding school, really cool private boarding school on an island in the middle of the Indian Ocean, where they will stay basically through their entire high school career. And should you ever flip on the international criminal conspiracy, congratulations, your child has won an internship and they're never heard from again. So effectively, these kids are hostages to make sure that you don't do anything you're supposed to do. And so when this story begins, our hero, Nate, his father is a doctor, has lost his license. They're kind of on the ragged edge of existence, and Nate does a thing that helps propel the series of events that allows him to eventually end up on this at this rich and snooty private boarding high school on an island in the Indian Ocean. And I should note that I, in many ways, have based this high school on my own high school, which was not on an island in the middle of the Indian Ocean, but was a rich and snooty private school of the sort that the freshman biology class had a scanning tunneling electron microscope, that it has its own accredited paleontological museum on campus, and should the Hittites ever attack, we have a bronze foundry. I am not kidding. This is all very, very true. Matter of fact, I'm wearing my high school sweatshirt, as a matter of fact. Webb, they're always very excited when I wear this. This always goes into the alumni photos. So please, send that off. Take that picture now. So here is School for Hostages, Chapter 1. So, where to begin? No, I mean that. I have no idea where the right place is to start with this story. Do I give a detailed background about being born and growing up? Do I skip ahead to my mother's death and my dad's professional downfall? Detail my and my dad's slide from almost rich to very definitely poor? Or do I just move ahead to when I almost broke Josh Gomez's arm on the first day of school? You know what? Let me start with almost breaking Josh's arm. Spoiler, it wasn't intentional. I didn't wake up that day with a plan to break his arm, I swear. But Josh is kind of an asshole, and he was about to pummel my friend Teddy into hamburger. The way it started was, Teddy and I were sitting in the back of Mr. Ray's AP English just before the bell. I was checking the news on my phone. Teddy was looking at Josh, who was near the front of his class, broing it up with all his bro friends. "It is not fair," Teddy said. He was sitting on top of his desk. "What's not fair?" I asked. I was in the chair of my desk because that's how desks are designed to be used. "Life, generally." I didn't look up from my phone. "We already knew that about life. You're going to have to be more specific." Specifically, that I'm 5'2" with acne and a club foot, while Josh Gomez is 6'2" and built like a side of beef, a very attractive side of beef, which is even more unfair. I glanced over at Josh, who was talking to his Hamilton High football teammate, Ramon Garcia. Josh was indeed really good looking, if you like dudes who look like they were carved out of meat. That's not the unfair part, I said. Oh God, what's the unfair part? Teddy asked. The unfair part is that in addition to looking like Channing Tatum's stand-in, Josh can do math as easily as you can tie your shoe. He is not just an athlete, he is a mathlete. Teddy shot his eyes over to me. Never use that word again. We go to a magnet school, Teddy. Mathletes abound. Teddy grimaced at this and glanced back at Josh. That is unfair. So unfair. I was talking to Renee yesterday, and she says that he's being recruited by MIT for math and by USC for football. That's probably accurate. Who do you think is recruiting him for being an absolute chode of a human being? Dartmouth. Which I thought was a pretty good joke. Sorry if you went to Dartmouth. And the first night somebody had gone to Dartmouth, and they were in the audience going, hey, come on. Their partner was laughing. They had gone to Brown. So, which I thought was a pretty good joke, but Teddy was already moving on. I'm being recruited too, by Nevada State College for wiffle ball. Dream big, Teddy, I said. Teddy waved in Josh's direction, which brings me back to my point about life being unfair. I watched Josh laugh and slap on his pal. He's peaking in high school, I said. Teddy snorted. Come on, Nate. He's going to go to USC, then to the NFL, then marry a supermodel and get a job running CERN. Then one day he'll run for president. Meanwhile, I'm going to be the jerk who says, yeah, I'm the guy President Gomez used to stuff into a trash can in high school. And that doesn't sound bitter at all. Years ago, just before Teddy and I met, his dad sold his startup to Yahoo for $200 million. And yeah, on one hand, Yahoo is where technology startups go to die, but on the other hand, $200 million. So Teddy, currently moaning about the unfairness of life, was going to be just fine. He knew it, and I knew it. If he made it out of high school alive, that is. Whether that was going to happen was an open question. Why that was an open question was people like Josh and how Teddy responded to them. As if on cue, Josh looked over at Teddy, probably because Teddy had been gesturing so dramatically at him 5 seconds earlier, and gave him the patented Josh Gomez once-over, the look that made you feel like you were being dressed out for slaughter. Then he said, hey, Freese, trying out for cross-country this year? Teddy slapped his knee. I get it. That's supposed to be funny because I have a gimpy leg and I can't run. That is hilarious, Josh. Can I try now? Hey, Josh, this year, are you trying to be anything other than a sphincter on top of a neck? See, this is what I mean about Teddy. He is 5'2", has a club foot, and he doesn't give a crap about any of that. Snark on him, he will snark back. Shove him into a locker, he'll take a clump of your hair with him as he goes in. It's kind of admirable, but it's also kind of dumb. Or would be if he didn't have someone running interference for him. Which, hi, I'm Nate. Josh stopped smiling when Teddy made his retort. Someone like you shouldn't be insulting someone like me, he said. Someone like him, Josh? I said, what does that mean? Josh turned his attention to me. You stay out of it, Gideon. I'm talking to your pal, not you. Aw, Nate, you see what he did there, Teddy said to me, but never taking his eyes off Josh. By this time, everyone in the room had quieted down, watching Josh and Teddy square off like predator and prey doing their first dance steps. It's okay for him to insult me because he's built like livestock, showing off to the rest of the steers in his herd. But when someone like me claps back, suddenly his masculinity gets all fragile. Shut it, Freese, Josh growled. No, really, he growled it. Teddy, being Teddy, did not shut it. Just curious, Josh, he said. What's the actual weight requirement to be able to insult you? 200 pounds? 250? Let me know so I can start the steroids to get up to the minimum. Josh took a step toward Teddy. "You clearly didn't hear me, Freese." "You started it, Josh," I said, trying to draw his focus, which worked. "Nobody asked you, Gideon. My point is, it would be nice if for once we could get out of the first day of school without you threatening harm to someone just because your insults didn't work the way you wanted them to." Josh glared at me, and I held his gaze and didn't do anything else. And here's the thing. I'm not a 6'2" slab of football muscle like Josh. I don't have a first-class math mind like he does either. But he and I have danced around more than once, and more than once because of Teddy. It wasn't an unfair fight. Not because I was a great fighter, it's just, well, Teddy's dad is worth $200 million. Josh's dad is one of the top criminal lawyers in Vegas. Both of them have their lives from Hamilton High planned out in detail and on an upward trajectory. Me? I don't have that, and I don't have that much to lose. And when Josh and I had danced around before, I think I made that clear to him. When you do that, you end up not having to dance nearly as much. So when Josh was glaring at me and I was staring back, and we were both really kind of talking to each other, negotiating, and somewhere in there I think Josh decided that he was going to back down. It was the first day of school, after all. There was the whole rest of the year to deal with Teddy or not. He was ready to let it go for now. "Of course, the thing about steroids is they shrink your balls to the size of raisins," Teddy said to Josh, "but I bet you already know all about that." Josh yelled and pushed his way down the row of desks to Teddy. I took my right foot and hooked it around the right back leg of the desk directly in front of mine. Josh was already cocking back his arm. I was waiting for him to hit the right spot on the floor. When he did, I kicked the desk in front of mine directly into his path. I wanted to stop his advance on Teddy and bring his attention back to me. I got the first part. But then Josh's momentum got him tangled up in the desk, and he went down and put his arms out to break his fall. And they did. Then Josh clutched his arm near his wrist and started to moan. It was Teddy, of all people, who came up to Josh and kneeled down to get a look at the damage. Then he looked up at me. "Holy crap, Nate, I think you broke his arm." Which made it a perfect time for Mr. Reyes to come into the room to start class. He was looking at his phone when he came in. Then he looked up at the scene in the room, saw Josh on the floor, Teddy over him, and me with my leg on the desk in front of me. "Oh, come on," he said. "You assholes couldn't even wait for the first bell, could you?" There you go. I'm really looking forward to finishing that. I've got about 20,000 words on it, and we'll be finishing that up probably in the next year. I'm going to turn it into my editor, Patrick, who will almost certainly say, "It's fine." Then I'm going to give it to Miriam Weinberg, who actually reads YA and loves YA and has edited YA, and she's going to go over it with a hammer, which I think is exactly what needs to be done, because YA is not the same as adult fiction, and if you try to approach the same things the same way, it's not going to work. So I'm actually looking forward to Miriam coming back going, "I have notes," and getting that fixed. We'll see how it goes. So the last thing that I was supposed to do, and it's 7:20 now, so we're running out of time, and then we'll go straight into the question and answer, is that apparently I'm supposed to be speaking authoritatively and persuasively for several moments on a topic chosen by the audience, even if I don't know anything about the topic. So we need somebody here, not you. I just had dinner with you. I know your trouble. To think of a topic, any topic. And now here's the thing, which is when you say that, then I'm going to start. And when what I've said just strikes you as absolutely ridiculous, just raise your hand. We'll just keep going until there's a majority of you with a raised hand. So we'll see how far I can take it, make it sound reasonable. What was your topic? Wombats? It's actually really interesting that you mentioned wombats. Because I know quite a lot about them. Actually, in high school, my intramural team was the Wombats, and it was the team that was actually part of Jameson Dormitory, which is the dormitory that I was living in at the time. That was my sophomore year. And so obviously, because I was a wombat, I needed to learn something about wombats. And here's what I learned. One, they're from Australia, which is down on the other side of the planet. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's kind of an obscure country. Australia tried to kill me once, but that's not important. It wasn't a wombat that did that. But they are Australian, they are marsupial, and they are one of the few animals, along with the platypus, or mammals, which are mildly venomous. And it's one of those things that people are like, I've never heard of that before, but here's the thing. It's not, like when you think of venom, you think about it injecting with teeth or something like that, or in the case of the platypus with the actual, the little spur at the back of the leg. With the wombats, it's actually in their saliva. And so what happens is, in order for them to paralyze a prey, with their venomous saliva, they have to run up to it and several times and just slobber the hell out of it. No. I've actually seen this on National Geographic. There was a special on the wombats, and it was just fascinating because here's this mother wombat with, the little baby wombats in the pouch, right? Just running up to this koala, just everyone's like, running back, coming forward. And the thing about koalas is you can't really tell when they're like stoned or poisoned or not, because they're kind of slow moving anyway. They're the sloths of the marsupial world. But eventually, the thing fell out of the eucalyptus tree, which the wombat, by the way, had to climb up in order to slather it with saliva. What? The cube shape? No, that's a myth. That's a myth, and quite frankly, I'm appalled that you are perpetrating this. This is why you actually need to talk to experts, people who really know about the wombats. For example, myself. All right, you got me. All right, that's that. This is the problem, because I've actually found that people will put up their hand. They're like, no, you're digging a hole. I want you to see how much further you'll go. So I took the accumulation, they are not, in fact, venomous. They are poisonous. If you eat one, you'll get a very bad stomachache. So I think that's, we are at 7:24. We started at 6:35, so that's about 50 minutes. So now we're going to do the question and answer portion of the evening. And here's how the question and answer portion goes. Which is that you can literally ask me any question you want. You can ask me about the new book. You can ask me about previous books. You can ask me about writing and publishing. You can ask me about my life as a writer in general. You can ask me personal questions. You can ask me about politics. You can ask me about my cats, which are adorable. Yes, I know you want to know about the cats. You can ask me any question you want, and I will answer that question. Sometimes the answer to the question is, I cannot believe you asked that question. You are a terrible person. Leave now and never come back. As long as we know that those are the ground rules. Who has questions? Raise your hand and speak clearly, so then I will repeat the question. And we'll go ahead and start with you, Chow. How Australia tried to kill me. Well, first off, you have to know that when you arrive in Australia, they're like, good day, here's a koala, and here's a spider! And it gets you. And I didn't believe when people said, Australia will try to kill you, that Australia would try to kill me. I thought that was like a myth, But in fact, it tried to kill me. So here was the deal. I was literally walking across the street after having seen Strictly Ballroom the musical, which was tremendous, by the way. I recommend it highly for everyone. And I stepped off a curb, and my calf muscle just ripped almost completely in half. And why did it happen? One, Australia. Two, the day before, had been in Perth. I had actually previously been, I was in Melbourne at the time it happened, but I'd been in Perth the day before because I had been the guest of honor at SwanCon. And I went to Kings Park, which is a big, sprawling park that they have. And it has a beautiful botanical garden and all that sort of stuff. And I had a day free, so I decided to do that. And I walked around, and I probably walked maybe about 10 miles, doing that. And the Kings Park was at the very top of a hill that was like California Street in San Francisco, very steep. So I did a lot of, exercise. And here's the thing is I am sedentary as hell, right? This is one of the reasons that I wear the Aloha shirts, because they are dazzle camouflage. It's like the colors, they're so bright, we can't tell. And he's gained extra 20 pounds. So I had actually stressed myself walking so much. I didn't think about anything about it, but in Melbourne the next day, it just snapped. I was literally stepping off a curb and went rip, and I'm like, ah! And I had to walk, and I was not halfway back to my hotel, and I had to make it I just couldn't lie down in the street in the middle of Melbourne. I mean, maybe you can do that, if you're a native Australian, but I think as an American, they would frown upon that. So I ended up walking back on my tiptoes because it was less painful than flexing this thing. So I walk back on my tiptoes like this. La la la, la la la. Get back to the hotel, and immediately the first thing I do is go to the bar. And just hang out there's some Game of Thrones actors there because we're at a Comic-Con sort of thing there. And they were just talking, and I was like, yeah, I just tore up my leg, and I'm going to go to bed now. And when I wake up, if it's not feeling better, I'm going to figure out what I'm going to do from there. Because I was in Australia, I didn't know, do they have hospitals and all? Right? And so I went to bed, and I was like, it'll probably be fine in the morning. And I wake up at 6 o'clock, and my leg is on fire. And I'm like, nope, this is a real problem. And then I did the most rock and roll thing that I've ever done in my life, which is I called for the hotel doctor, right? I didn't even know that these things really existed. Like all the movies and the documentaries where it's somebody gets on the phone and they're like, our drummer has overdosed. Get the doctor up here with the activated charcoal. And the hotel doctor comes in and shoves stuff in there. And it's like they pay him off. No one can ever know, sort of thing. And so I called and I was like, do you have a hotel doctor? And they're like, absolutely. And all of a sudden I was Bon Scott, and I was like, I think I need to see the hotel doctor. And so the hotel doctor comes up, and she looks at my leg, and she's, talking to me, and she's like, you're an American, aren't you? And I was like, oh my God, how did you know? And she says, you need to go to the hospital right now, because in addition to your having torn up your leg, she was worried that because I had traveled so far and had such long trips, that I could possibly have a pulmonary embolism of some sort, or a blood clot from my leg would go up to my brain and just kill the crap out of me. So I was like, Australia is awesome. And so I actually had to call the convention and say, I need to go to the hospital because apparently I'm going to die of a clot. And so they took me to the expensive private hospital. And the expensive private hospital that I went to, where they put me in emergency, they did the MRI, they made sure that I wasn't going to die of a blood clot, they gave me genuinely excellent drugs. And they gave me a pair of crutches to walk around with, and it cost $400. And I was just like, I'm coming to Australia for all my medical care from now on, because it would be cheaper to fly to Australia. Because this year I had chest pains, right? For a number of days, and I mentioned it to Chrissy, and she's like, you should call the doctor. And I called the doctor, and you should go to the emergency room. And I went to the emergency room, and they were like, yeah, you have heartburn, which was great. I'm not like, I feel ripped off. No, I have a cardiac arrest. Deal with it. But that was like $3,000. It would have been cheaper to fly to Australia, go to one of their private hospitals and get everything taken care of there, which I'm clearly going to do the next time I need to do things. But so I'm walking around, so everything's fine, but I have to walk around in these crutches. And so I'm walking around in the crutches at the convention, and it's the convention has a number of people there from Game of Thrones and from other ones. And I remember it was one of the Game of Thrones guys he was like, "What happened to you?" And I told him, and he's like, "Oh, you're fine." And he kicks my he kicks my crutches, and I'm like, No, I see what you did there. I mean, he was joking, but it was a kind of thing. Now, the thing is that I didn't want to walk around on crutches all the time, and so the good news was I was already at a convention where the conventions had like all these craftsmen. So I went and I got the most badass cane that you could ever get, and it was just like this, and it had this really ornate bulb head, and so I was walking around with this really awesome baller cane. And the thing is that it's absolutely true that when you have a cane and you're just not doing anything with it and you're sitting, you got like this. Right? Right there. It's like, yes, you may approach Scalzi. He may kill you with his cane. And it was great. And then I finally came home, and I did the thing that I've been looking forward to doing all my life, which I stood out in my yard, and I shook my cane and got a picture of it. So what I'm saying is the lessons here are never exercise. Australia will kill you. Avoid Game of Thrones actors when you are actually physically disabled. These are 3 things that we've learned. Next question. In the back. Not only, the question is there a possibility for another Old Man's War book? Not only is there a possibility for another Old Man's War book, it's actually contractually specified. So there will absolutely be at least one more book in the series. Now, you make a good point, which is that the series wrapped up pretty well with the end of all things, right? And in fact, within the 6 books, there are 2 arcs. There's the John Perry and his family arc, which starts with Old Man's War and ends with Zoe's Tale. And then there is what I call the Harry Wilson arc, which is the Human Division and the End of All Things. And in both of those cases, I think that those arcs are complete. We're not likely to go back and revisit John or Jane Perry, or John Perry and Jane Sagan, and we're not likely to go back and revisit Harry Wilson. So if there is going to be another Old Man's War book, it will probably start a new arc, which means if I write one, I will probably write at least 2. Don't tell Tor that yet. I haven't. It's going to be a surprise. When I'm going to do it is up in the air at the moment. There's lots of factors. I have a number of books that I need to finish. I should probably write book 3 in the Interdependency series before I do anything else. And people are like nodding, yes, you need to. You bastard, you ended this one on a cliffhanger too. Sorry, that's just that's what I do. And there are a couple of other things. On the other hand, we are currently developing Old Man's War for a film at Netflix. Don't get too excited. We were developing it as a film at Paramount and then a TV series at Sci-Fi. It's been in development one way or another for the last decade. So, but we have a script in. I saw the treatment of the script, not the final script. The treatment was shockingly not bad, and I like the writer. And if they are happy with the, I will see the script probably later, either this week or next week. And if everybody's happy with it, including Netflix, then we would go forward with production. And if we go forward with production, then they will slate when it is that movie is going to come out on the Netflix. And right around the same time that movie comes out on Netflix, surprise, you'll have an Old Man's War book. Because I like money. And that's kind of the way that gets done. So a couple more questions and then we have to move on. Here and then here. So yes.
So you've gotten to work with a lot of fantastic, awesome people. Who do you want to work with most that you haven't?
It's a hard question to answer because I don't really ever think about it that way. I don't have this sharpshooter list of people that I'm going to work with and just sort of go down the list. Partly because the way that I do stuff doesn't quite work that way, and partly because I don't know, that would make me feel really weird. It's like, hi, I like you only for what I can get from you. We should definitely collaborate because it would be really good for me. Right? And also because, quite frankly, if you can think about someone who you'd really love to collaborate with or to do something with, probably if they're probably busy as hell. Like they've got their own slate of things. And so what I've actually found really interesting is finding people that you just meet and like and end up doing things with, or that you work with because somebody else has picked them. John Harris, who does the covers for the Old Man's War series. He and I have a mutual admiration society now. I wrote the introduction to his art book. And we worked together because somebody else, specifically Irene Gallo, picked that. But it was a great pairing, and so I'm happy to work with him. Same with Vincent Chong, who did the cover for a lot of my Subterranean books, including The God Engines, which I think is an amazing cover. The fact that I get to work with him is incredible. Will Wheaton, I actually picked to start doing my audiobook stuff, but I did that because he and I just happened to be friends, and I knew that was something that he was interested in, and that he and I have the same vocal intonations, but he is actually an actor, so he sounds great, and I sound like me. So for me, I think it's much more interesting to meet people and then collaborate with them or support them or not, instead of sharpshoot people. It's like, yes, I totally want to do something with you. We should totally collaborate. That said, the only person that I can really think about that I would love to do something with is Danny Elfman, right? If we can get Danny Elfman to do the soundtrack for Old Men's War, I'm gonna die happy. We can't afford him. I already know this, but. And he's probably doing some damn Tim Burton film or whatever it is that he's up to. But, I've been a huge Danny Elfman fan since, the Oingo Boingo days. And, in fact, Danny Elfman is at the heart of the story that makes, of my celebrity counter, that makes people the most intensely jealous. Would you like to hear that? Yes. So, back in 1992, back when I was a movie critic, we would go and do press junkets where you would meet filmmakers and you would interview them and, do all that sort of stuff. And this particular press junket was in San Francisco because they wanted to take us to a studio where they were doing one of their movies. Disney was doing one of their movies. So we went to this place in the Mission that just basically looked like a warehouse, and we go in and there are all these sets that are basically, they're on a table that's maybe about this big, and on each of them is a one specific set for this film, and they all looked a little dark and they all looked a little creepy, and they were all the sets for Halloween Town for The Nightmare Before Christmas. So I have literally visited Halloween Town. And I very specifically remind this guy right here is sitting here going, "Oh, I hate you already." It gets better. So I very specifically remember Oogie Boogie's set, because they had Oogie Boogie set up at the wheel that he's turning to, do the thing that he does. And so we got to wander around and we looked at all the sets and they showed us how it worked, and it was all very cool. Then we all got herded into a little theater where we did a mass interview of Tim Burton and Danny Elfman and Henry Selick, who is the director of Nightmare Before Christmas. And they were going to show us a little bit of the movie. And they're like, okay, we got to show you some of this, but be aware we have the musical track, but we don't have the vocal track, so we're going to have to make do. And so they put it up, and then Danny Elfman stands up, and the scene is Jack's Lament, So Danny Elfman stands up and sings the entire Jack's Lament to us. We are literally the first people outside of Disney to hear it. So I tell this particularly to goths. And particularly the ones that have, Jack and Sally on their arms. I was like, oh, I've been there. And they're like, yeah, no, I love it too. It's like, no, I've been there. And Danny Elfman sang that song to me. And they're like, I hate you. And of course I drink in their tears. But that's the one that makes everybody jealous, right? That is the one that people are like, oh no, that's like a literal quote. So that would be the only one I can honestly think of. So, and then I guess final question. Yes. Make it good.
How many books do you have thought of for the interdependency world?
Oh.
Is it already 3 or 4?
Ooh. So when I started writing it, for the ridiculous contract for Tor, there were 2 books. And one of them took place in the time that the interdependency books happened. And then there was going to be another one that took place later. And then I started writing them, and I realized that just went completely out of the window. And so the one book became 2 books, is now going to be at least 3 books. And having written the second book, I'm like, can I really wrap this up in 3 books without making it sound rushed? And so I literally don't know what it is that I'm going to be, how long it's going to be. I know that it has to end relatively quickly because it is, in fact, the Empire is, in fact, collapsing. It's not a spoiler to say that's going to happen. I mean, so, but between now and then, I'm still kind of working out the particular details of that. Did she have a question? All right, what is the question? What? Oh, about my cats. Well, so currently I have 4 cats. What? Not with me. No. I have 4 cats. Currently, I have 4 cats. And the oldest one is Zeus, and he is a black and white cat, and he's about 10 years old. We have 2 girl cats named Sugar and Spice, and we have a new boy kitten named Smudge. And they all have their own Twitter account, which is called Scamper Beasts. And so if you go to the Scamper Beasts account on Twitter, as many of you know, you will see the cats do the various things that the cats do, and they are all very cute and cuddly and sweet. One of the things that I really like about the Scamper Beasts is that they have a large number of followers, and that is useful for me because I have this thing that is called the Scamper Beasts rule. And here's what the Scamper Beasts rule is. I get a lot of jerks coming at me on the internet. I don't know why. I am the world's nicest person, but apparently they target me. And here's my rule. If you come into my tweet stream with the intent of trying to cause me grief or to insult me or just to be a jerk, I go in and look at how many followers you have. If you have fewer followers than my cat, I immediately ignore and mute you forever. My cats have 14,000 followers. It's super useful. I mean, occasionally I'll condescend to them before I mute them, or I'll say, come back when you have more followers than my cats. But generally, it's really reduced the number of people who are jerks that I have to engage with. So I recommend the Scamper Beast rule for everyone. Please feel free to use my cats as your benchmark for which jerks to associate with online. Because you will find that it makes the world, online world, a much more congenial place. So with that note, I'm going to let you come over here and tell us how we're going to do the signing of that. And also, thank you all so much for coming out to see me tonight. You've been wonderful.